Memphis, Tennessee, sits on top of a fault system that crosses the Mississippi River in 3 places and produces an earthquake roughly every other day. Fewer than 11% of residents carry earthquake insurance, and FEMA has modeled exactly what happens when this fault finally breaks. $300 billion in damage, 86,000 victims, 15 major bridges destroyed. Every number in that report points at one city. So why is nobody talking about it? The new Madrid Seismic Zone stretches 150 miles through the Mississippi River Valley, from northeastern Arkansas through the Missouri Bootheel and into western Tennessee and Kentucky. It produced 317 confirmed earthquakes in 2024 alone and 273 more in 2025. Most were too small to feel. A few were not. On May 16, 2024, a magnitude 3.8 earthquake struck 6 kilometers south of Ridgely, Tennessee, roughly 15 kilometers from the Mississippi River. 5 months later, a magnitude 3.7 hit near Steele, Missouri. Over 155 people across 5 states felt that one, and in late February and early March of 2026, a mini swarm rattled the region with 7 earthquakes in rapid fire near New Madrid and Lilburn, Missouri. The most recent recorded event was a magnitude 2.0 near Tiptonville, Tennessee, on April 6, 2026. Yesterday, every single one of these epicenters falls within the soft, loose sediments of the Mississippi River floodplain. The fault system does not just run near the river, it crosses it 3 times. It also crosses the Ohio River twice, and every crossing sits beneath bridges, levees, pipelines, and communities that were built as if the ground beneath them would never move. This is the same fault system that reversed the flow of the Mississippi River, created an entire lake in Tennessee, and rang church bells in Boston over 1,100 miles away. Eliza Bryan watched from the riverbank as the water ran backward in front of her. That was 214 years ago. The fault has not stopped moving since. Brian Blake runs the Central United States Earthquake Consortium, the federal partnership in charge of earthquake readiness across 8 states. The core problem is simple. Earthquakes are a no-notice event. There is no warning. Buildings, bridges, roads, infrastructure, it all goes at once. And unlike hurricanes or floods, there is no window to get out. The shaking starts, and whatever is standing either holds or it does not. And this is where the New Madrid problem splits from every other earthquake zone in America. The $300 billion question is not whether Memphis could be hit. The question is whether anyone will be ready when it happens. Right now, roughly 11 million people live within the New Madrid Seismic Zone impact area. Memphis alone has 1.3 million in its metro region. St. Louis has 2.8 million. Interstate highways, rail lines, pipelines, fiber optic cables, and high-voltage power lines all cross the fault zone. And the scientific community is fighting over a question that carries $300 billion in consequences. Seth Stein, a professor of geological sciences at Northwestern University, has spent decades building the case that the New Madrid Seismic Zone is winding down. In 1999, Stein and geophysicist Eric Calais published a landmark study showing that GPS stations across the fault zone picked up ground movement with an error of 0. The crust shows no strain buildup. Without strain building up, no energy exists for a major earthquake. Storing enough for a magnitude 7 would take at least 10,000 years of invisible loading. Stein's 2010 book, Disaster Deferred, laid out the full argument. The small earthquakes happening today are simply leftover aftershocks, and the actual hazard has been overblown by roughly a factor of 10. Michael Weissession at Washington University in St. Louis reached similar conclusions. Mian Liu at the University of Missouri studied 2,000 years of Chinese earthquake records and found that major earthquakes almost never repeat on the same mid-continent fault segment. If Liu is right, the next big earthquake in the central United States might not even come from New Madrid. It could come from a fault nobody is watching. That was the case for Calm. Then came the counterattack. In 2014, Morgan Page and Susan Huff at the USGS ran 10,000 computer test runs, checking the aftershock theory, and found a problem the winding down camp could not explain. If today's small earthquakes were truly aftershocks, the math demands roughly 135 magnitude 6 or larger aftershocks over the past 2 centuries. Only 2 actually happened. The aftershock model does not fit the data. The test runs pointed to one conclusion. These earthquakes are happening on their own. 200 years is too long for an aftershock sequence. Stress is being built up now. Meanwhile, paleoseismologist Martisha Tuttle had been digging through the physical record. Literally, over years of fieldwork, Tuttle and her team found liquefaction features at more than 250 sites across the Mississippi Valley, proving that magnitude 7 or larger earthquakes struck the region around 900 AD, around 1450 AD, and again, 214 years ago. That sets a repeat cycle of roughly 500 years. And the rate of small earthquakes in the zone is not dropping over time. They are not fading. If you are finding this helpful, subscribe. We cover earthquake, volcanic, and geography events like this as they develop, with the full picture you need to actually follow what is going on. Alright, so here is where things get genuinely complicated. In 2010, Eric Calais proposed something neither side of the debate expected. Rapid glacial erosion 10,000 to 16,000 years ago may have unclamped ancient faults in the region, releasing stored stress locked in the crust for millions of years. This model explains both the GPS readings showing no current strain buildup and the ancient earthquake evidence showing repeated major earthquakes. The faults are not being loaded by ongoing tectonic forces the way California's faults are. They are spending down a limited pool of ancient stress. The problem is that it makes the situation harder to predict, not easier. If other unmapped faults still hold that stored stress, they could break without any warning signs. The stored stress is invisible to current instruments, and the usual methods of measuring strain may not apply to this region at all. The USGS official position, reaffirmed in the 2023 National Seismic Hazard Model, sides with continued watchfulness. The official odds remain 25 to 40% chance of a magnitude 6 or larger earthquake within the next 50 years, 7 to 10% chance of a magnitude 7.5 to 8. Those numbers have not changed, so the surface readings say one thing, the ancient earthquake record says another, and 1.3 million people in the Memphis metro area are living in the space between those two answers. The science debate matters because it shapes policy. And the policy in Memphis right now has a gap the size of the Mississippi River running through it. No major American city depends more completely on groundwater than Memphis. Every drop comes from the Memphis Sand Aquifer, a massive underground water source holding over 100 trillion gallons. The system works through 170 wells run by Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. 5 confirmed cracks already exist in the clay layer that shields the aquifer from surface pollution. A major earthquake could damage well casings, crack water pipes, and knock out pumping stations across the network at the same time. There is no backup. If the aquifer system fails, the city has no water. The soil beneath Memphis makes everything worse. The city sits on deep river-deposited sediment laid down by the Mississippi over millions of years. During strong shaking, this sediment does not just carry vibrations, it makes them stronger. And in the worst areas, it liquefies, turning from solid ground into something closer to quicksand. The highest risk zones include the Mississippi River floodplain, Mud Island, the downtown riverfront, and the Wolf River floodplain running through northern Memphis. Sand blows from the last major rupture are still visible in farmers' fields along the Wolf River, stretching 36 kilometers upstream to Collierville, well inside the Memphis city limits. When wet sandy soil loses its strength during shaking, the ground stops acting like a solid. Foundations sink unevenly. Buildings tilt. Underground pipes rise to the surface. Water mains crack at every joint. Gas lines snap. Roads buckle into waves. That is the kind of shaking that brings down unbraced brick and stone buildings. And Memphis has 25,000 of them. Over 42% of Memphis homes were built before 1969. Decades before any earthquake building rules existed. Alan Medlock with Shelby County Construction Code Enforcement knows the inventory well. The older sections of downtown are packed with heavy timber buildings and unbraced brick structures, the kind that are likely to collapse in any serious shaking event. The estimated upgrade rate sits at roughly 5%. Then there are the bridges. The I-55 Memphis-Arkansas Memorial Bridge was built in 1949 and carries 64,000 vehicles across the Mississippi River every day. It is not designed to handle the earthquakes possible in the new Madrid Seismic Zone, and it cannot be upgraded. It can only be replaced. A new bridge received a $393 million federal grant in July 2024, with construction expected to start in 2027. Until then, 64,000 vehicles cross that bridge daily on Faith. The nearby I-40 Hernando de Soto Bridge received a $268 million seismic upgrade. But in 2021, inspectors found a cracked tie girder that forced an emergency closure. At least one highway bridge and one railroad bridge crossing the Mississippi are considered unlikely to survive a major New Madrid earthquake. 25,000 weak buildings. 64,000 daily bridge crossings on a structure that cannot survive what the fault beneath it is capable of producing. Oil and gas pipelines crossing the Mississippi directly above the fault lines. The FEMA scenario projects 425,000 pipeline breaks and leaks across the impact zone. A single burst in a neighborhood can start fires that spread out of control when water mains are already broken. Memphis faces the same post-earthquake fire risk that destroyed San Francisco in 1906, except across a damage zone covering parts of 8 states. $300 billion in projected damage, and only 11% of residents insured against any of it. The results of a major New Madrid earthquake would not stay in Memphis. The city sits at a critical link in the national supply chain, and almost nothing that makes it critical has been built to survive strong shaking. The FedEx World Superhub sits on 940 acres in Memphis, handling 484,000 packages per hour. It is the busiest air cargo center in the nation. A magnitude 7 earthquake damages 940 acres of tightly organized infrastructure, conveyor systems, sorting equipment, runway surfaces, fuel lines, all of it sitting on the same loose soil as the rest of Memphis. FedEx knows this. Dave Lusk runs part of the global operations team, and every month, his scheduling group walks through a scenario where the Memphis hub gets destroyed entirely. They drill the backup plan. The region surrounding them does not. The company with the resources to plan is planning. Everyone else is hoping it does not happen. Memphis is also America's 3rd largest rail center, served by 5 Class 1 railroads, home to the 5th largest inland port, and the location of Tennessee's only oil refinery. Nearly half of total United States trucking capacity passes through the New Madrid Seismic Zone area. A major earthquake here puts a chokehold on the lifeline of the American economy. The full FEMA scenario models a magnitude 7.7 earthquake breaking all 3 fault segments at the same time. $300 billion in direct economic losses across 8 states, with ripple losses potentially doubling that figure. 86,000 victims. 750,000 damaged buildings. 15 major bridges left completely unusable. 2.6 million households losing power. 7 million people forced from their homes. That $300 billion figure would make it the most expensive natural disaster in American history by a factor of more than 2. And here is why the comparison to California matters. Seismic waves in the old, cold crust of the central United States travel roughly 20 times farther than in California's broken rock. The last time the New Madrid fault broke, people felt it across 5 million square kilometers, 10 times the felt area of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. A magnitude 7 here affects a vastly larger area than an equal earthquake on the West Coast. The damage zone is not a city. It is a region. And unlike California, the central United States has almost no earthquake building culture. California adopted required earthquake-resistant building codes in the 1930s. Memphis did not adopt any earthquake rules until decades later, and the vast majority of its buildings went up before those codes existed. The Northridge earthquake struck Los Angeles in 1994 at magnitude 6.7 and caused roughly $44 billion in damage. That was in a city built to handle earthquakes. Memphis is not. The damage here would be far worse, and the recovery would take far longer. $300 billion, 7 million forced from their homes, 11% insured. Those 3 numbers tell the entire story of a region that knows the threat exists and has chosen, slowly, quietly, to stop getting ready for it. Earthquake insurance coverage in the New Madrid Seismic Zone has collapsed. In the year 2000, roughly 60% of residents in the highest risk areas carried earthquake policies. By 2022, that number had fallen to 11%. Average yearly costs jumped from $57 to $569. Some insurers left the market entirely. Jason Ginder with Missouri Farm Bureau, based in New Madrid itself, watched it happen firsthand. His group tried to get coverage through Lloyd's of London, and Lloyd's pulled out. Clora Lindley Myers, the director of the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, has been pushing to raise awareness. But homeowners and renters across the zone still do not realize their standard policies do not cover earthquake damage. They assume they are covered. They are not. Missouri does not have a statewide building code. In New Madrid County, the county sitting directly on top of the fault system's most active segment, earthquake-safe building is only required for large, non-residential buildings. For a small town, that basically means no buildings are earthquake-safe. FEMA and the Central United States Earthquake Consortium have tried to fill the gap with drills and test runs. The 2025 Vigilant Guard exercise simulated a magnitude 7.5 earthquake near Tipton County, Tennessee, bringing together dozens of agencies across multiple states. These exercises produce grim findings. Road damage would block emergency vehicles for days. Hospital capacity would be overwhelmed within hours. Mutual aid deals between states assume working roads and bridges that would no longer exist. But drills cannot make up for structural strength. You cannot practice your way out of 25,000 unbraced masonry buildings. Jeff Grunwald runs the New Madrid Historical Museum, located at the epicenter of the last major rupture. His approach to the threat is the same as most of his neighbors. If it happens, they will deal with it and hope for the best. Fingers crossed. The mayor of New Madrid himself was not even familiar with Missouri's own earthquake insurance awareness campaign. That is the gap. Not a gap in science, a gap in urgency. The odds of a magnitude 7.5 earthquake on the New Madrid Seismic Zone in any given year sit somewhere around 0.15 to 0.2%. That is low. But the ancient earthquake record is not unclear. Magnitude 7 earthquakes have struck the region roughly every 500 years for at least the past 4,500 years. Only 214 years have passed since the last sequence. The GPS data is real, but mid-continent fault systems may build up strain invisibly between major releases, and the Calais erosion model suggests energy stored millions of years ago may still be available to trigger breaks on faults nobody has mapped. Even the scientists who believe the zone is winding down agree that magnitude 5 to 6 earthquakes remain possible. And a magnitude 6 on top of 25,000 unbraced masonry buildings, a single-source water supply, and bridges that cannot survive strong shaking is not a small event. That is a regional emergency that Memphis has not built the infrastructure to handle. $300 billion in projected damage. 7 million people in the displacement zone, 11% with insurance. And beneath the Mississippi River, a fault system that has been producing earthquakes every few days for as long as anyone has been listening. The ground moved yesterday near Tiptonville. It will move again this week. The only question nobody can answer is how hard.